Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 5, Episode number 16. Today is Sunday, April the 8th, 2018. I'm Graham, over there is Tyler, and over there is Melissa. The band is all back together. What do we have to talk about this week? We have an announcement by the Seals. We have the West Division is pretty much set. Well, not pretty much, it is set in terms of the playoff picture. The East is nowhere close. And we had some games to talk about and a bunch of things. So we'll start off with a couple of comments left on last week's show by our old buddy, Anthony Garcia. First one was, love that Land Shark jersey, which I believe is what Melissa was wearing last week.
It was.
In fact, I love when you guys and gal wear your different jerseys. I don't feel so alone with all the different jerseys. NLL, WLA, MSL, CLAX, ALL, jerseys that I own. So thanks, Anthony. I know Tyler has a few and I have a few. I think Melissa is the clear winner of the three of us because she's got about, 50, 60, 70, something like that.
I have too many. eBay was too much of a good friend for me, I think.
I think I have all but one of mine from eBay as well, actually. I think I have seven or eight, something like that. Two of mine are All-Star jerseys from All-Star games I did not go to. One in Portland and one in Colorado now I think about it.
I went to that Portland one. I didn't get a jersey.
I have a jersey. It's signed by most of the players that played in that game. I think there's signatures all over it, half of which I don't even know who they are.
I got a new car that weekend. I remember that part though. Drove up to Portland for the long weekend and drove home in a new car. So that was crazy. That's memorable.
Nice.
I love that I have the Lumberjack jersey. That's actually one of my favorites.
I like that one too, actually. All right. Another comment from Anthony. And this was about the Bleacher Report video streaming thing that we mentioned briefly last week and got absolutely no more news about this week, which I'm kind of surprised about. And the comment was, since when did Bleacher get into the video streaming game? I had what I feel was a great idea, and that is to start up a video company that would handle all the NLL game coverages, as well as mini documentaries on the players along the lines of what NFL Films has done for the NFL. Why no one has jumped on it is beyond me, but I sure would love to invest into it. And I have to kind of disagree with Anthony on this one. I don't want a startup doing this. I would like a well-established company who knows what they're doing and have done it before on a big enough scale that we don't run into all the problems that we've seen with NLL TV and with whoever the people were before NLL TV. YouTube seemed to not have too many problems, but we're only on YouTube for a year. But NLL TV's just had too many issues where they're running into either streaming problems or bandwidth problems or production problems or all kinds of things that are problems that have all been solved. And so I don't want to start up doing this. I want somebody who knows what they're doing and has done it for years. And that may or may not be what we're getting next year with the Bleacher Report thing. It sounds like it's a new thing that Bleacher Report is getting into. I don't know if maybe they bought another company who's been doing it for years, or maybe Bleacher Report just has the resources to be able to invest and hire people who have been doing it for years. But I guess we'll see what's going on.
Bleacher Report is owned by Time Warner and Turner Broadcasting, so they have the ability to call upon those resources. So hopefully it's just a branding thing of existing technology as far as like the streaming goes, but they're branding with somebody who doesn't have a ton of brand behind them or brand history. So that's where, like, I agree, like saying that we're going to Bleacher Report, it's going to be great, BRL, BR Live, whatever the hell it's called. Like, it's not a thing. Like, why are we so excited about being part of something that doesn't exist or is brand new? And let's listen to something with Sikevich, or no, I think it was the latest Stealth Classified after this came out. And like, well, like they're going to be in the forefront. They're going to be already digital when people are already streaming. And that's good. So I really hope that whoever sold them on this from Bleacher Report is pulling upon his resources at the parent company and not just selling them because they're good salesmen.
Yeah, I think the last thing we need is to be at the forefront in that all of the mistakes that we won't make in the future, we're going to make with you guys, and that's what we'll learn from. Well, we've already been through that a couple times, so if we can avoid that, that'd be great. But yeah, well, I guess we'll see what happens next season. Maybe they'll switch for the playoffs like they did last year or 2 years ago, whenever it was. They had one provider during the regular season, switch to a different provider in the playoffs, and that's who we figured was going to be the provider for the next season, and it turned out to be somebody entirely different. So I don't know what they're going to do. Anyway, let us move on to the news of the week. A couple of things. One, I guess we'll get to quickly, and that is the Rush has clinched the first place in the West Division. They've announced the date for the Western Final, which is a Thursday, which kind of sucks. Thursday, May the 10th, will be the Western Final, with the Rush getting a bye in the first round. The Colorado Mammoth have clinched second place, and Calgary has clinched third. So Colorado and Calgary will play the week before that. Whether it's going to be the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we don't know yet. Though I guess I'm pretty sure the Mammoth have clinched second place. I don't think the Roughnecks can catch them, which means that Mammoth probably know what date that game is going to be, or at least have the chance to figure it out now. And so the Roughnecks are third, and the Stealth are out. And so we now know what's going on in the West. The East is nowhere close, and so we'll get to that a little later. The other news is...
Hold on.
Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, the Thursday thing, obviously it's probably comes down to arena availability. Like, you can't use it that weekend. Please use it Thursday. Yes, you can have it Thursday. Huge advantage for the Rush in reality, because Calgary and Colorado have to play the weekend before. They might have like 4 days rest compared to at least a week like usual. And the Rush will be rested. Huge advantage to them. I'm surprised that this whole thing went through and is allowed, but they're the home team and they got to do it that weekend to keep on schedule. So that's what they did.
Probably the other option was to go to the next Monday or Tuesday, and they decided that's probably worse.
Yeah.
All right. The other,
probably the Avs or something.
Sorry, Colin.
No worries. It's probably the Avs or something like that already are booked that weekend.
Yeah, it could be.
I admit it's been a while since I followed NHL, and I know the Avs are doing well. I don't know if it's playoff season for NHL yet. I don't know. Maybe when you two do. Maybe that's why.
Playoffs haven't started yet, no.
Okay. I was thinking, well, maybe the Avs playoffs trumped, but because you would think that Mammoth would have put in for those dates a lot longer ago so that Thursday be an issue. Because they have made the playoffs most of their career, I guess. Their team career. And
given the start from the Stealth, it was a fair bet that they'd make the playoffs.
Yeah. Just why does it have to be Calgary?
Yeah, I think we've looked at that before, and that Colorado and Calgary have met in the playoffs many times, and you guys haven't fared so well.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
All right, the other news of the week is that the San Diego Seals have announced who their GM and head coach will be for their inaugural season next year, and that is former Rock player Patrick Merrill. I think it's a little interesting that the Wings decided to go with somebody with as much experience as they could find in Paul Day, and the Seals decided to go with a rookie. Now, I think Merrill has lots of coaching experience, but in the junior ranks, he's got zero coaching, and like not even assistant coaching at the NLL level. And I have no idea about his GM experience. He may be a GM in the MSL or in junior as well. But presumably Steve Govett, who kind of knows what he's doing, sees something in Merrill and says, "You're ready to do this at the NLL level." So that should be interesting. Any thoughts from you guys? Tyler, what do you think?
Will he trade for his brother and bring in Brody? So like, hey, let's just catch a flight together. It'd be very interesting to see the Rock trade away their captain, but so I doubt it. And he's older, but that'd be A little interesting. Hey, my older brother's the coach, so I'm gonna go ahead and play for that team. I don't know. Like you said, like he's got the junior A experience. I guess he's the coach at Six Nations, and so now he's going to take that coaching experience and go to the next or go to the highest level. But GM wise, it's a tough call. Hopefully, it's not too much for him. It's a very interesting thing, but he gets to focus on that, I guess. And he gets to go spend his winter in San Diego, so that's pretty
not
doable.
bad.
Yeah. So yeah, no other thoughts there. I'm glad to hear the announcement though, so we can start more speculations as to like who he's going to pick. Melissa, how about you?
It's definitely an interesting choice. I think having Govett behind him definitely is going to, I think, play a factor because Govett has done dual roles and he has a lot of experience. So Merrill might actually be a really great choice because he can guide him, mold him just a little bit more than maybe some other coaches that he might go head to head with constantly. It'll be interesting to watch. We've definitely seen some coaches that don't necessarily have a lot of experience come in and make waves. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. I mean, look at the trio that Colorado has. None of them were known for being coaches, but they've done a really good job. So it'll be interesting. I look forward to watching what he does with the team. You want to take us forward, Graham?
All right. The games of the week, there were 3 of them, and the home team won all 3. We had Saskatchewan over Colorado, and then this afternoon we had New England over Calgary in overtime, and Georgia in Toronto almost in overtime, but didn't quite get there. But awesome versus not awesome. I'm going to start, and I'm going to continue with that team right there, and just say that all 3 games are really close and really exciting. I didn't actually see the Calgary-New England one, but just looking over the score sheet, Calgary had a 4-goal lead in the second quarter. Then New England came back. The game was tied 5 different times in the third and the fourth quarter. Went to overtime before Johnny Powless finished it off for the Black Wolves. In the Friday night game, Saskatchewan was leading 10-4 in the fourth quarter, and Colorado scored 4 straight to get back into it and make a game of it. They didn't quite get all the way, obviously, and Saskatchewan ended up winning that game. But the last 5 minutes of the game was Colorado could easily do this and come back, and we've actually seen Saskatchewan lose big leads a couple times already this season. One time they lost the game, another time they I think they won it in overtime. But it looked like it might happen a third time, but Colorado might certainly make a game of it. And then the Toronto-Georgia game this afternoon as well. Similar to the Calgary game, Georgia had a 4-goal lead in the second quarter. Toronto scored 5 straight and actually took the lead. Then that game was tied 5 times in the third and the fourth as well. Came right down to the wire. Toronto almost actually had possession right in front of the goal with less than 20 seconds left, and it almost looked like they didn't realize how much time they had left and kind of panicked, and somebody shot a pass that went to nowhere and ended up not even getting a shot on net. But the fact that all 3 of these games were very close, I thought was pretty awesome. Melissa, what about you?
Well, I can't say that I thought all 3 of the games were pretty awesome. I didn't get to watch all 3, and one of them I actually felt was kind of dull until the very end. But the Calgary-New England game was definitely exciting. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of hard play, some very chippy play. Some might even say some dirty play between those 2 teams. But it was definitely exciting, and New England had a lot riding on this game, so it was definitely interesting to see how they came out, because as we've talked about a few times, they're 2 very distinct teams this season. They come out really hard and strong. You're like, yes, they're going to rock it, and then it's like, is this the same team we just watched? So Calgary didn't have as much. I think the announcer said that if they won all the rest of their games and Colorado lost all theirs, then Calgary could have clinched second, but I think that was the nail in that coffin, as you said earlier. So it was a fun game. It was definitely exciting, so that would definitely be my first awesome, but I can't speak to the other 2. All right, what about you, Tyler?
I'm sticking with the theme, the close Sunday games, and more importantly, that they were spread 2 hours apart, so they were easier to watch. I could just roll one right into the next. Like, even with the overtime in New England, the They were just finishing up all the pregame ceremonies in Georgia, so it missed like 10 seconds or something. It was absolutely perfect. And thank you, whoever may or may not have been responsible for scheduling that non-overlapping game schedule that was made. I was super happy to see that. I didn't have to miss a Brett Manny goal. I mean, yeah, I love those. This guy, yeah, that guy right there. That's Brett Manny's helmet. Brody Merrill, he had a great game, and I got to see all of it. He had a great goal. He pressured that end of game sequence that Graham talked about with the rocketing a shot was because Brody Merrill was pressuring Lyle Thompson carrying the ball and like knocked a pass down. And, Steph LeBlanc in the New England game, his game tying goal, I think at the end of the regulation, this is a great effort. This is like, wow, like he wanted that goal for his team to win this game and to keep going to the playoffs. They were playing a lot on the line, and like just the effort he made, I got to see it. I didn't have to worry about picking which game to watch. So that was a great experience for a Sunday. That's my first awesome. Graham, what do you have?
All right. I'm going to go for my next one back to Toronto, Georgia, and we'll go with Dan Lintner. Lintner's been a healthy scratch most of the season. Once they started like clicking with Tom Schreiber and Adam Jones and Hickey and Hellier and the whole gang, and they started scoring 1 million goals a game, they basically said, sorry, Dan, we'd love to get you in here, but we can't mess with what's working. And then it kind of stopped working, and they kind of didn't mess with that either. So, I mean, they made a few changes here and there once they lost Schreiber, but Lintner only got into a handful of games, and he was a healthy scratch last week as well. And then he showed up this afternoon and was in the game and scored 5 goals. He's always working hard. He's always driving to the net. He's not the step back and fire a 105-mile-an-hour shot like a Brett Hickey or an Adam Jones. And I don't know how hard Adam Jones shoots, but he's always very accurate. But Lintner's more the dive across the crease or get around and underneath people. He's not that big a guy. But he's always working really hard, and I like watching him play. So for him to have a great game this afternoon with 5 goals was pretty awesome. Melissa, you're next. And you're muted again.
Yeah, I'm muted again. I like to do that. I totally forgot what my next awesome was going to be. I got distracted with your story, and I was like, that's actually pretty awesome. And my brain went bye-bye. So will come back to me. What about you, Tyler?
Sure. My next awesome is for my kind of my first start of the week because it's the most considerate, smart thing I've seen in a while from a lacrosse person. Dan Dawson's sister scheduling her wedding during the Nighthawks bye week. She had to get married in April, apparently, but she knew that her brothers would be available to join her wedding that weekend of their bye. So she scheduled a wedding, and then Dan got traded, and so he had to be a healthy scratch in that rush game yesterday. So that kind of cracked me up. But that's primo lacrosse stuff. It's exactly how both my brothers pro lacrosse players, and I want to get married. There, I can do it this time. And that was a great experience too. A great little story to hear about. Good job on Dan Dawson's sister. She's my first star of the weekend, really. What about you, Graham?
All right. I guess I'm going back to the Toronto, Georgia game yet again. And this one was a goal against the Rock, but it was a pretty awesome goal. So I'm going to go with that. I meant to look to see when this was. I think this was the one. Yeah, this is the one at the beginning of the fourth quarter, about 3 minutes into the fourth quarter. The ball was down near the net. I can't remember if it was a shot or just somebody had dropped it, but the ball was basically rolling around in or near the crease. Randy Stotts dove over the crease while he was in the air. He picked up the loose ball, tossed it over his shoulder to Kyle Matisse, who faked a shot, deked around a defender, and then shot high top corner. Just a beautiful goal. And a great assist by Stotts, great shot and deke by Matisse. So that was a pretty awesome goal, even if it was against the Rock. And yeah, back to you, Melissa.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to appreciate a good goal, even if it is against your own team.
Yeah,
I know how hard that can be. So I remember what it was I wanted to do as my awesome. I really love the support that I've seen come out for the Humboldt lacrosse team, or not lacrosse team, the hockey team. And so even though it's a different sport and, it's not just the Canadians, although it's probably heavily that way, just seeing the support. And I think at least one of the teams was doing some kind of a fundraiser, something like that. So it's one thing I think is just one of the most awesome things about the lacrosse community is how tight knit it is, how it comes together. I mean, I've certainly developed friendships just because of being a fan of my team and connecting with fans all over the place in Colorado and, as far as Canada. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of fun, and it's really awesome what the community's like. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. We saw it with, oh God, I forgot it. I just drew a blank on his name. The Bandits player's son that had cancer.
Tucker Williams.
Tucker. I kept thinking Tyler, and I'm like, no, that's not right. It starts with a T. So yeah, with Tucker. So it's just things like that. I think it's just really awesome. Everyone gets really involved. There's a lot of fundraisers, and unlike some leagues, it really feels like the players and fans they're really involved. Like I don't know, like they have a stake in it, which you don't see with some other leagues, some other things. So I just think that's really cool. So that was my awesome. What about you, Tyler?
That was a sad event. And it was, happening in Saskatchewan, and having the rush like the same day putting stuff together was very nice of them. Okay. My last one was Jesse King's goal towards the end of regulation, or I guess it was a game-winning goal because they didn't go to OT, where the ball had bounced around the crease and ended up behind. And he picked it up, and he was just flying through the air, just like his epic lacrosse commercial. And I had to go to review because Jordan Hall was down in the crease, and Jordan Hall's like scrambling to get out of the crease, and it was close enough that they couldn't prove he was in. And they let the goal stand. But while they were looking to see if Jordan Hall was in the crease, just like frame by frame, you just see King flying through the air. And so he's like perfectly paused, like just fully extended, like I'm going to dunk this ball. And like he made the commercial. Then he did the exact same move that was put in slow motion for replay. It was a good prophecy there by the Epic Lacrosse people in their branding. But it was a good goal, and it was a good series. Though I do think that Brad Cree got hurt pretty bad on that. Like I think his knees messed up because of the way Jordan Hall landed on him when he went into the crease to start that whole sequence. So it wasn't all sunshine and roses, or daisies, whatever you say. But Jesse King, game-winning goal of that style was pretty awesome. All right, back to you, Graham.
I'm actually all out of awesome. So unless, Melissa, you have another awesome, we can move on to the not awesomes.
Well, I don't know that it's an awesome, but it's also kind of is an awesome. Following up on a little bit what Tyler was saying, it was interesting because in one of the games, I think it was one of the Rush announcers, that they actually had mentioned that the leap across has become the new diving goal. And it really does seem to be true. We're seeing some almost Michael Jordan-esque leaps lately with the goals. So that's kind of awesome. There's definitely something about those diving goals that is just really flashy and fun. But as the announcer said, it's a lot less hard on the body to be doing the leaps. So, and they're still exciting. So that would be my next awesome. Did you have anything else, Tyler?
I do not.
All right, we'll go to the not awesomes. And I thought of moving this one actually to just a separate topic, but I have a feeling all three of us will want to chime in on this. Well, I'm going to ask you guys to chime in on this, so just to see what you guys think. My not awesome is the on the broadcast from the Colorado-Saskatchewan game from Friday. There were two different issues, but they're very related. The first one is just that the in-house music was so loud. And I couldn't hear the announcers speak most of the game. Most of the time I was listening to it. I was trying to hear them calling the play-by-play, talking about, analysis in between the plays and that kind of stuff. And the music was just so loud I couldn't hear them. Eventually, I just turned the sound off entirely and just watched the game. And I really would prefer to get their insight and get their analysis and hear what's going on in the game. But I just couldn't listen to it, and it was so distracting, so I just turned it off. So that kind of sucked. That was definitely not awesome. And I did email the NL support people and just said, I don't know if you can do anything about this, but I've never heard this before in any other game from Saskatchewan. So something's changed, whether they're sitting in a different place or something else is going on, but it was just way too loud. The other issue, and this has nothing to do with the broadcast itself, but the music was louder when the Rush were on offense than when they were on defense. And I've heard this before, and I guess the idea is the defensemen like to talk a lot to each other and communicate and let people know who's going where and who's covering who and that sort of thing. And so I guess communication amongst defensemen is more important than communication among forward. So whenever the Mammoth were on defense, the music was way louder. And then as soon as it transitioned to the Rush being on defense, the volume was turned down, and it was very noticeable. Like, it wasn't something you could just not really realize. I tweeted about this a number of times, and then there was a bit of a tweet storm. All kinds of people were talking about it. Evan Schemenauer, who was at the arena, said that this is done everywhere. He said he's heard it before in Saskatchewan. He's heard it in Edmonton and Calgary. He said he'd even heard it in Buffalo. Scott Loeffler, who's the director of operations in Buffalo for the Bandits, came on later and said, we don't do this in Buffalo. And Evan said, well, the last time I was in Buffalo was 11 years ago, so it's very possible that that's changed, and my apologies if that was wrong. So that was fine, but I just wasn't impressed by that. And I think we had talked about this before, possibly on the show, or possibly I had a conversation with somebody else. And if the fans want to do that kind of thing, and the fans are smart enough to say, okay, well, we'll cheer like crazy when the other team's on defense, and we'll be quieter when our team's on defense, I don't have a problem with that. That's the fans doing that. When the team itself is doing it, and the team presumably controls the PA guy, and the team says, hey, turn the volume up when they're on D and turn it down when we're on D, I don't like that. That's something unsportsmanlike about that, and I was not impressed. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What do you guys think? Tyler, we'll start with you.
I've never heard it like that in terms of the discrepancy between possession, offense, and defense. It was extremely noticeable. Like, they almost turned it off at times when they were on defense, and like, oh, we got to have just loud enough to say that we're on. And yeah, like, I've been watching games for 14 seasons now, and I think two of you have been watching games longer than that. Like, I've never heard it with that much discrepancy as a clear, like, home field advantage. I imagine they're not following some guidelines somewhere, and if they are, that's crazy, because it was too radically different to be consistent, and it'll be addressed in the rules or bylaws, to say you got to play the music. It's got to be the same, close enough, like, because it's ridiculous. It's a home field advantage that is, I think it's unfair. Like, it's a huge competitive advantage, and beyond, like, the advantages you get sometimes where, oh, we won't show the replay. Now they have to show the replays. If they have to show the replays, then they have to keep the music consistent. And I bet we won't see this again. Somebody's going to throw a fit somewhere who does have the proper power to change that. What do you think, Melissa?
I can't say that I noticed it nearly as badly as what the two of you are describing when I watched the replay. So maybe something was changed in there, or I just wasn't paying enough attention. I will admit, because I know I had a few commercials that were much louder, so I didn't notice that. But I feel like the Mammoth did that one game, and that was only one game. But normally what they do is they play softer, slower music when the other team's on defense. So like the Sesame Street theme song, things like that. I can't say that I recall being at a game where it was that huge of a difference from what you're describing. So yeah, that seems pretty unusual.
Yeah,
Do you have anything else, Graham?
I had certainly never heard it before in Toronto. I've been to games in Toronto, Buffalo, and Rochester, and I've certainly never noticed it. And it's possible that the Rock do the same thing in that they play different types of music when the Rock are on offense versus defense. But in the 17, 18, whatever years I've been going to Rock games, I've never noticed anything. So if there is a difference, it's very subtle. This was not. And so I wasn't too thrilled with that. So that is what I would certainly call not awesome. Tyler, what's yours?
All right, my first not awesome is that the Rock were still missing Tom Schreiber today. They had him warm up, but he didn't play. They lost again, and based on this, carrying that logic forward, is it true that Tom Schreiber is the MVP of the league because the Rock collapsed without him? But yeah, I want to get him back out on the floor and doing his thing and being healthy in general, so he can play all his lacrosse, because they have MLL coming up, World Field Championships. There's still lots of games to be played, and we want to see him as part of all that. So he's close. I mean, he's able to warm up at the games. He's really close. But yeah, just not there yet. So come back, Tom. Please come back for America and for the Rock.
For the Rock.
Yeah. Melissa, how about you?
All right, so my first not awesome was Riley O'Connor hitting the ball into his own net after Aaron Bold made a terrific save. He went to stick check his opponent and instead knocked the ball in. So that was completely not awesome, especially when that game went to overtime. So that's my not awesome. What about you, Graham?
All right, I just realized that we reversed the order again there, so sorry about that. Toronto offense, again, not awesome. Dan Lintner, like we said, had a great game, 5 goals. Adam Jones had 1 goal. Brett Hickey had 1. Hellier had 2 assists. That's it. These are the 3 of the heads of the 4-headed monster we talked about earlier this year. But I mean, it's clear who the biggest head of that monster is, and that's Tom Schreiber. Without him, they just don't know what they're doing, and that makes no sense, because it's not like we've never seen Brett Hickey have a great season before. He's had a couple, and Rob Hellier was outstanding last year, or not last year, year before last, and Adam Jones has been outstanding many times. And the fact that the 3 of them can't put anything together without Schreiber around, it seems, is just really puzzling. And I'm certain that I'm not the only person who has no idea what's going on here. Probably the 3 of them and Blaine Manning are all trying to figure it out as well. But again, the transition was pretty good. The defense was pretty good, keeping Georgia to only 11 goals. And I thought Nick Rose had a good game. But the offense and they scored 10 goals, not so bad, but half of that's Dan Lintner. So Toronto offense, other than Lintner, not awesome. Tyler.
Yeah, my next one, I had this realization, like, now that the Stealth are definitely out of the playoffs, they already changed the 2 assistant coaches, but you pretty much got to fire Jimmy Badley. And who would the Stealth get to replace him? And as much as I have constantly railed against Kurt Malowski, like, he's won. Like, he wins, and he could bring in a very fresh attitude and a strong attitude to get the ship going in the right direction. So I know he's under contract for several years with the Roughnecks. So the Stealth need to trade for Kurt Malowski this summer. That's not awesome to me, because I don't really like him as a person, but it could change things for the better. So it's the right thing to do for the team. And I think I have a bonus side effect that people keep talking about. Andrew McBride is ready to coach in the NLL, and he lives in Calgary directly, or Alberta, and then he'd be local. So the Roughnecks no longer have to fly in their coach; they'd have a local coach, and the Stealth would have a local coach because Mulaski's from Coquitlam, BC area. So everybody saves money. And then they get new coaches and they can change things up, because I think Calgary's been in a rut too. They wouldn't maybe be opposed to this idea to get some fresh change to get over the hump and out of that kind of third place area they've been hanging, or third, fourth place in the West that they've been. So it could make both teams better to do this. And I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't like Kurt Mulaski because he seems like a whiny jerk. But if it makes the team better, it could be worth it. So that's not awesome to me, but it's good for the team. Melissa, do you have another one?
So my next not awesome is I definitely disagree with how exciting the Mammoth Rush game was. I actually was very close to turning it off because I was tired of watching my Mammoth play as crappy as they were. And I remember it being, gosh, I want to say 8-4, 11-4. I mean, it was, the Rush were just dominating them. I was surprised by the end score, which I did keep it on, but I will admit second half I wasn't nearly as attentive because I just wasn't finding the game very enjoyable. So that would be my not awesome is, once again, the Mammoth did not play all 4 quarters. What about you, Graham?
I'm actually out of not awesomes. The Colorado Saskatchewan game. My comment about it being close was basically the second half of the fourth quarter, because that's when Colorado started scoring and actually made a game of it, and you realize, okay, they could actually do this and come back all the way, and like they were down 10-4 only 5-6 minutes ago, and now it's 10-8, and they've only have a minute and a half left, but 2 goals in a minute and a half in Lacrosse is certainly doable. And the fact that they'd scored 4 in a row and got back into the game was had to give them some confidence, and it didn't happen. But that part of the game was certainly pretty exciting. The rest of the game, you're right, was less than thrilling.
Well, and I definitely agree. It was very exciting the last quarter, or last half of the fourth quarter, but the fact that the Mammoth were even in that situation is definitely the not awesome. It was just so frustrating because they'll play really well one week, and then, like with New England, is this the same team I just watched? I don't know what was going on, but they just looked really lackluster. So especially heading into the playoffs, and especially playing dang Roughnecks, I'm just not feeling very hopeful. We'll just put it that way. So that is very not awesome.
All right. I'm out of not awesome. So Tyler, did you have any more?
Yeah, I've got one more. And it's a personal thing. Like my picks 2 weeks ago, I think I went 0 for 4, which was pretty hard to do. And so this past week, between Easter and being on spring break here, I made no picks, and I treated it like the old computer game, thermonuclear war, and the only winning move is to not play. And this weekend, I had no wrong picks. Right? I didn't pick any right games, but I had no wrong picks. Felt good. But I'll get back on that wagon again this week and try my best. That's my last not awesome. How about you, Melissa?
So my not awesome is the Rush announcers, who apparently thought LeBranch was hilarious and kept expecting more comedic lines out of him. They said it numerous times. Oh, maybe LeBranch is going to say something funny about this, and it was like, that was an abnormality. That's not the norm. But they said it so many times, it was kind of getting on my nerves. But it's part of what made that funny was that was an unusual thing. That wasn't something he does. That's not his shtick. In fact, he usually comes across very stern. So I'd say that's almost what made it funnier. So yeah, just the constant chatter on wanting him to basically to be a comedian was a little not cool. But it's a little thing.
And every time they said that, I thought, no, I don't want him to do that, because I don't want this to turn into every time he makes a call, we're all waiting to see what funny thing he says. Like I'd rather have it be once a season he does something like that, or something. It doesn't. We don't want it to happen too much, or it just becomes old. All right, so we will move on to our predictions from last week. And as Tyler mentioned, he got none wrong, so good job. Melissa and I did get one wrong. We were both 2-1. We both missed the Calgary New England game, but we were in overtime away from missing that, or from getting that right. So it was, we'll say 2.5 to 0.5 maybe. So overall, what do we have? We have Melissa in first place as per usual. She is 41 and 27. I'm right behind at 39 and 29, and Tyler is at 30 and 35. Tyler hit the 500 mark and then had that one bad week. And so I'm sure Tyler will be right back on the wagon again, as he mentioned. And we have 5 games next week. And so actually we'll go in reverse order this time just for fun. So Tyler, give us your picks for this.
All right. Yeah, these are the 5 picks that'll get me back up to 500, I think. Yeah, picking most of the games this weekend. Like, we kind of know more about the teams, and we know like who has more to play for to help guide some of these choices. Because the East is so tight, so amazing that they're all either 8-7 or 7-8, which is just ridiculous in most senses. Rochester at Toronto. I'm going to assume, as I would have this weekend, based on the previous game, that Tom Schreiber will be back. And that's good for the Rock. And the Rock can beat Rochester because of that. So I'm picking Toronto. The Rush are at Vancouver on Friday night. And I mean, Vancouver, what they have to play for is to be a spoiler, playing for their jobs. But the Rush are that good. And so I'm going to pick the Rush to win. New England at Colorado. New England has more to play for. Colorado knows exactly how their season is going to be. They're in second place in the West, and that's that. New England is fighting like they did today to get in the playoffs, to get home spot in the playoffs. Like, that's all within reach. So they have more to play for, so I'm picking them. Buffalo at Calgary. Buffalo fighting for their spot in the playoffs. But Calgary's not a bad team. And they're at home. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Calgary on this one. Finally, Georgia at Saskatchewan. And this is an interesting one, as the Rush are flying home to meet Georgia, who's waiting for them. And Georgia did that same thing in Vancouver, where they're stealth played the night before and then had to fly back and meet the rested Swarm team, I think. And I'm going to pick Georgia. It'll be a bit of an upset, but they're rested and they have more to play for. Everything's set in the West. You get a tired Rush team, and they're going to take advantage of that. So those are my picks for the week. I'm going to go over, even though I said reverse order, I'm going to go to our champion, Melissa, and get her picks.
And see how I was muting, thinking you were going to Graham next. All right, so a couple of these games I found really hard to pick. I chose Rochester over Toronto, mainly because with both these teams, it's almost flip a coin at this point. And seeing that my co-hosts were both picking Toronto, I had to just be a little bit contrary. So we're picking Rochester. With the Rush playing the stealth, sorry, Tyler, and I know you feel it. You just can't pick the stealth right now, and especially the Rush, the way they've been playing. They're pretty much you just default to them, even if you're wrong, you're still gonna be right most of the time. New England and Colorado is gonna be a hard one. Both teams have definitely played hit or miss. I was not impressed with Colorado's play this past weekend, but they're playing at home. That definitely has an impact. New England doesn't play in an arena quite like Mile High or Invesco or Pepsi Center. It's a long day. This is why I need to stop creating before doing the podcast. Brain just turns to mush. But at the Pepsi Center, it's definitely a different atmosphere. It can influence games. Not so much as it used to, but still can. Calgary over Buffalo, I think this is going to be the consensus. As I've said a few times, I'm not confident in Bouquet as the goalie. Buffalo's definitely had some struggles. They can turn it around. I just don't know that they're quite where they need to be yet. And Georgia and Rush, I actually put the Rush down, but I think I'm going to change that to Georgia for a lot of the reasons that Tyler said. Georgia's going to be well rested. They have a very potent offense, and the Rush are going to be playing, even if it's not the toughest team, according to their record, the Stealth, I think, are going to wear them out. And so I am changing my initial pick from the Rush to the Swarm. All right, Graham, you want to close us out?
All right. We'll start in Toronto, Rochester and Toronto. Tom Schreiber, like you said, Tyler, will hopefully be back in the lineup at that point, and everything will turn around, and they'll score 27 goals against the Nighthawks, and everything will be right in the world again. Well, maybe not, but I'm going to go for the Rock on that one anyway. Rush and Vancouver, yeah, I got to go for the Rush. I imagine the Stealth would love to be the spoilers there and just say, "Ha, screw you, we won." Even though it doesn't mean anything, but we won anyway. But I'm not going to actually go ahead and predict that. New England, Colorado. Melissa's right that both teams have been up and down. New England has been way up and way down. And when they're down, they're usually way, way down. But I'm going to go for Colorado in this one. New England's just been too hit or miss for me to actually choose them to win. Buffalo, Calgary. Both teams have been really hot and really not so much at different points in the season. But I'm a lot more confident, I guess, in Calgary's goaltending than I am in Buffalo's. They've gotten some good games out of Bouquet, but they've gotten some not so good games. They've gotten some good games out of Higgins and some not so good. So they're very hit or miss in the goaltending situation. So I'm going to go for Calgary there. And Georgia, Saskatchewan. I can see the Swarm coming back into Saskatchewan and beating the Rush, particularly when the Rush are playing their second game in 2 nights. And part of me is like, Georgia can't beat Saskatchewan. I don't think so. Well, they just did for the championship last year. It wasn't like it was a long time ago, but they've looked like a very different team this year for the most part. Now they've got all of those pieces back that they were missing at the beginning of the season, but still haven't looked quite like the Swarm from last year. And so I'm going to stick with the Rush on that one and hopefully gain a game on both of you guys. And I guess that will do it. We've got our predictions in. We've talked about all the games and stuff. And so we're looking forward to a fun weekend next weekend with a bunch more games. So this has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next week.